All right, good morning. My name is Vanessa Vitug. I am from San José. I teach 11th and 12th grade physiology and forensic science. So to begin, could you please humor me for a second and close your eyes. Close your eyes, close your eyes. Okay, I'm going to say a word, and I would like for you to think about the first images that comes to mind when I say radiation. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What are the words and images and feelings you have towards that word, radiation? All right, go ahead and open your eyes. Okay? So, is this what you saw in your mind's eye? Can I get a hand raised, please? All right. My reaction with this was the same when I started this journey 10 months ago. My viewpoint regarding radiation was very narrow and very limited, essentially to these images. It was simply what I saw in books and movies and what was essentially taught to me over the years, and I teach science. And even though this was technically my 7th Y&I cycle, being accepted into Gary Brudvig's seminar on energy sciences brought forth anxieties and trepidations unlike my other Y&I units. And it's because the topic of energy sciences is something I knew very little about. So Susan Sontag once said, "It's beginnings that are hard. I always begin with great sense of dread and trepidation." When I entered the energy sciences seminar, I knew very little about energy production, conversion to electricity, or its impact on global economies. And like most of my seminar group, I immersed myself into articles, web journals, resources from my local library, from here as well, until I began to feel comfortable enough to participate in the discussions on solar power, storage of power in batteries, natural sources of energy, and the efficiency of plants to harness the power of the sun. Okay? Once the July intensive session arrived, and with the reassurances of my seminar leader, Gary, and my seminar cohort, Melissa, Joey, Crystal, Ty, Jason, Drew, Zach, and our seminar coordinator, Cristobal, I began to gain more confidence in myself and in the writing that I had to produce. As I read, as I gathered more resources, my vision of radiation started to expand. It started to include these ideas that radiative energy comes from more than one source, and that there are many benefits to radiative energy. This includes X-rays, CT scans, radio tracers, and radiotherapy. I came to the realization probably about the second or third day of intensive session that radiation is everywhere, everywhere. It's unavoidable, it's necessary, and I came to further understand that despite being exposed to radiation each day and every day, our bodies are designed with protective measures to protect us from low doses of radiation. My unit that I'm currently teaching is helping my students demystify radiation for themselves. Initially, this is how I began, and I did this a similar experiment when in the summertime with my seminar group, because we practice hands-on learning. I began with radiative energy. It's what my students know best. It's the sun. We just started that simple with my 11th and 12th graders. In this first activity, they were shown a demonstration using UV beads, and it changed colors when exposed to UV light. This simple demonstration reduced their anxiety level and regarding the start of a unit, and they in turn created their own mini experiments for their peers to try. So the two examples on there is actually student-generated lab experiments. Once the experiment was completed, I ask the students to give feedback, because I want my students to get comfortable essentially giving feedback to each other and then making recommendations and commendations. I always try to balance it that way in my class when I get feedback from students. Give your peers a recommendation so that they have constructive feedback, but also give them a commendation. So it's not always, oh, we gotta improve this, but this is what you're doing well. So these are examples of what the students said in each other's labs. Simply giving them that title of expert groups or expert students boosts their confidence. And this is 11th and 12th grade kids. You think they would just naturally have it at this point, but they don't, especially when it comes to science. Okay, they need that constant prodding, that constant boost of self-esteem to feel like, I can do science, I understand this material, I understand this vocabulary, and this is how I'm able to use it. I finished the unit. I finished actually this portion of the unit with an exit ticket, and that's what the cards are about. So as my students are leaving my classroom, and many of you use this technique of exit tickets, their students are asked to give their feedback on the class. One of the things I always ask my students is, if you were to do this activity again, how could you improve upon it? So, or how can I improve, or what do you need from me in order to make this lesson better? And that gives the students like ownership of the class. So they are more than happy to give you lots of comments on how the class was run. So that's what the exit tickets are about. With the completion of that first interactivity, I then facilitated students into diving deeper into this world of radiation and what it's all about. They chose topics that they were interested in, and some of them included man-made sources of radiation, nuclear power pros and cons, UV's effect on the skin, and the effectivity of sunscreen, and finally, radiation at home and at school. Students worked collaboratively to read articles and to annotate them, and then to share them in their expert groups. Finally, they were asked to give a presentation to the class in a informative poster. So this is 3 of the examples of the posters that were produced by my students. So in a 3-minute speech, 2-minute speech, students basically conveyed what they learned, what they researched, and they were confident about their topic because it's something that they started, they chose the topic, they wanted to learn about it, and now they're talking about it comfortably within the classroom. So when I return to work on Monday, I hope to finally finish my unit, and the way that I will finish my unit is by having a mock EPA hearing on the pros and cons of nuclear energy and as a source of electricity. So I'm proud to say that within this short amount of time, which it's been about 10 days of my unit, my students' viewpoints on radiative energy and radiation has changed. It's not narrow, it's not limited, it actually encompasses so many different topics, and the word radiation has been demystified for them. Thank you.